to be here.
Thank you.
Uh, I am excited to always hear about your day, and I hope that we can take some of those tornado and rainy days, and during this hour, bring you a little sunshine. That's my goal. So, our session today is going to be about quotes and evidence. So, we are going to be doing some writing, quite a bit of writing this session, more than we usually do. But that's okay. If you're traveling back and forth from home to school to home, that is fine. You can unmute if you like, or give us just what you can. We completely understand that. So again, there is the resource guide, and it looks kind of like this tonight or this afternoon. So we don't have a lot on our resource guide today. We're going to really focus on being in our composition book. And we're going to talk about that point of view again. Of course, you have the slide deck that I add to for each session. So all of our sessions that we've had together are right in one space. So if you have your writer's journal from last time and can access it and want to use it, that is perfectly fine. If you have a traditional notebook that you just like to write on or a piece of paper, that is completely fine. But we are going to do a 2-minute write. You know, our 2-minute write is what we like to use to build that stamina. So we want to incorporate 2-minute writes in our classroom. So I really want you to see what it feels like as a writer. So I want you to think about this is our fourth session together. We're almost halfway there. We have 12. So I want you to think, and just for 2 minutes, I just want you to write about the sessions we've had, something you've incorporated in your classroom, any thoughts that you have about what we've done together. So I'm going to be quiet and I'm going to let you write for 2 minutes about just what we've learned. How have we grown together? What have you tried in your classroom? What are you going to try? Anything that we've done with these first 4 sessions. I'm going to be quiet and let you write. One second. And our 2-minute write's over. I hope you got to reflect a little bit about what we've done over the last 4 sessions. And now I would like for you to read through your writing and pick up that golden line. Now we say golden line, but it could be that word, that golden phrase that you want to share. This This line needs to be breathed into the air. Others need to see it. It's my main thoughts. So I'm going to give you just a moment, and would you please add your a golden line from your writing, from your 2-minute write? Go ahead and just add your golden line, your golden word, your golden phrase as to what kind of a reflection of what we've done the past, your thoughts. I love that you all are putting these great things in here about writing and how maybe your idea of writing has changed from our first session together until now. Oh, yes. I love that we are working to build that stamina, and that 2-minute ride is perfect for stamina building. But the golden line is really perfect for metacognition because when I ask my students to go back and reread their writing with a purpose to find that one line, then it is that nice way of them going back and saying, what was I thinking when I wrote this? Or, hey, I need to do a little work on this, but I'm going to come back a little later. So I love for my students to pull in that golden line. It also is a great way for me to do some formative assessment really quickly because if we've used our 2-minute write to write about something that is content related instead of kind of just reflecting, then I get to see, are they really able to pull out that one line? What did they write about? So I'm glad that you all said that writing can be fun because we're going to have some fun writing today. Last week we did on one hand, on the other. I don't know if you put your students in any situations where they had to tell on one hand is this point, on the other is the other another point. But we're going to stay in that thinking of kind of practicing looking at a variety of point of views, knowing that my thoughts are not the end all be all, that I get to see others' point of view. And this is a little play on that. This is fortunately and unfortunately the story of my life. No, just kidding, but kind of not. So, unfortunately and unfortunately, what I'm going to ask you to do in just a moment is I'm going to ask you to access that fortunately and unfortunately slide deck that's on your resource guide. And in a moment, Jamie is going to graciously put you in a breakout room. Now, pay attention to that room number because whatever room number you have, I want you to find that slide and let it be yours. And then you and a partner are going to take times creating fortunately and unfortunately situations. So let me give you an example. Fortunately, I won the lottery. Unfortunately, my car was broke down, so I had no way to pick up my money. Fortunately, my BFF said she would drive me. Unfortunately, she made me promise I would split the winnings with her evenly for the ride. Fortunately, we made it to the lottery office safely and I picked up my winnings. Unfortunately, the bank was closed, so we couldn't cash my check. Fortunately, we found a room to stay all night. Unfortunately, my friend got mad at me and left me all alone at the motel. Fortunately, I got to keep all my money. Now, so I want you all to access your drive and your slide deck just a moment of fortunately, unfortunately. I want you to find the breakout room that you're put in. So pay attention to that number. And then this is fun writing. So we're just saying, okay, fortunately, I found $100 in the Walmart parking lot. Then we have an unfortunate. What's going to happen to it next? So we have to play on that fortunate and unfortunate situation that comes up. So one person, the person with the most teaching experience, will be our fortunately writer in your pair. That means our teacher with the less years in this great profession will be our unfortunately writer. So, fortunately writer, I've started for you. The first person that will write will be our unfortunate person. So, unfortunate person, you're going to have to come up with a situation where Found my $100 in a parking lot, but something bad happened. Okay. And then we're going to kind of tell this story. Now, I know that we may have some people that are mobile right now in their cars, and that's okay. If you can't type, then you can just verbally share yours. So I hope my directions was clear as mud. Give me a thumbs up in the chat box if you know what to do. Oh, thank you. So we're going to have about 6 minutes to work with your fortunate and unfortunate stories. And I'm excited to see what you come up with. So, Jamie, if you're ready, we are ready for our breakout rooms. Okay. Go ahead and join your breakout room. And if for some reason you don't have someone, you can come back or we'll take care of it. So I'll see you in 6 minutes. If you can, go ahead and access that breakout room. Share some time with your fortunately and unfortunately situations. Go ahead and start the timer. Okay, Jamie, could you pop Sandra in a room with someone? It
Yes.
may, it may not that she may be just that third person in the room, and that's okay. She can partner up with someone.
Let's see.
Let's look on there.
I think that must have got it.
Okay, we'll just wait till the timer goes off, and then we'll give them send a minute message to them, and then we'll bring them all back. Give them a in. Yay. So I love fortunately and unfortunately because that makes me have to twist my situation that I'm in from a good thing to a bad thing to a good thing to a bad thing. And that is kind of how life works. So it's set up and down. This was a fun, right? And I want to hear your thoughts about it. So tell me if you enjoyed it. I'm going to tell you, like I said, I am just promoting that looking at things from a different perspective in a fun way. I'm looking at finding your voice and looking at different points of view. So that's why I like this. So now when I think about this and I think about, okay, how can I look at this from an academic lens and make it a little more pushed into social studies or science? Um, I like to give my students historical topics like, fortunately, I was a British soldier in the Revolutionary War. So then they have to come to the unfortunate part. Unfortunately, I was selected to go fight in the new country. Then I want them, what is something, when they got over here, what is a fortunate thing that happened to the British? Vice versa. I could do the same thing. Fortunately, I got to be a Minuteman in the Revolutionary War. Okay. Tell me an unfortunate event that happened because of that. So it's a twist. Unfortunately, I didn't have many supplies. Fortunately, I knew a lot about how the lay of the land in our area. So I can turn this into um, an academic thing as well as a way to just get my students to thinking and writing. It would be great brain and thinking quickly, yes. And I do think my students loved it. When I did it first, I did it just kind of like this, a fun, fortunately, unfortunately. Then I turned it into an academic, fortunately and unfortunately. Not that what we did wasn't academic, but, it it my goal was to get them to see different points of view and be able to twist and look at situations differently, and for them to just be in the flow with the routine, and then I would put that layer of, "Okay, now you're a British soldier. Now you are a, colonist." And so it makes them be able to look at a historical perspective in a little different light. And it's fun. I really like it. So try this with your kids. You're gonna enjoy it. Anyone else like to unmute and share? Open this space up to you. If not, we're gonna move on. Today is gonna be, I wanted to start out with something light because the rest of our time together might be a little more heavy. So I want you to think about this. Don't be a hit and run quoter. What do you wonder about this image? So if I'm asking you to wonder, I want you to ask me a question about this. What do you wonder? What do you wonder about this? Go ahead and drop a wonder in the chat. We are going to be using the chat a lot for the rest of the session. So find a way to make yourself a little comfortable with it. But when I look at this image, what do you wonder about this? What do you wonder? Very nice. Oh, why is the book so long? So now I've piqued your interest, haven't I? I've got you thinking about this. And sometimes that's why wondering is so great to use. Well, we're going to talk about a hit and run quoter. I bet you all have some hit and run quoters in your room. When we think about quotations and evidence, we want to frame them. And when we frame them, we put relevance and meaning to it. Okay, I bet you that your students are probably pretty good at picking out evidence. Sometimes they have no idea why they picked out that evidence, but hey, you told me to pick out something from this story, a quote from this story, and I did it. Well, that's only part of your job. Quotations and evidence doesn't speak for themselves. They must be framed. They need to be presented in a way that makes it relevant and clear to the reader. Because unfortunately, their little voices are not going to be there when someone else is reading it to explain it to them. So they need to write in a way that their evidence is clear. Now, how do they do that? They make a quotation sandwich. We think a lot about paragraph sandwiches, but I'm just talking about a quotation sandwich. How is a quotation sandwich made? And I know some of you all may not have had supper yet, like me. This is making you hungry, I bet. But it should be hungry for how I can use this in my classroom. A quotation sandwich has that introduction, and it is just that according to, as the sandwich says, Mark Twain claims on page 32, it states, that's my bread. That's my first piece of bread. My middle, my lettuce, my tomato, my ham, my cheese is my quote. And that is just that piece of evidence that I've chose to use to support my answer, to explain. And then my last piece of bread, that bottom piece of bread, that most important piece of bread is my explanation. Nothing else matters if I don't have that explanation, that last piece of bread. Unless you're on a low carb diet, that sandwich won't work without that last piece of bread. It's hard to eat, it's messy, and let's face it, it's just not as good. So we want that whole sandwich. Now, I talked to you a little bit about the quotation sandwich, but I think Elsa could explain it better to you. So I'm going to share this little video with you. As you watch the video, if you see anything that stands out to you, that is a wow to you, that you like, or that you have a question about, please put a comment in the chat. I would love if you, each one of you could share just one comment in the chat as you watch the video, something that's a wow. And this is heavy on quotations, is talking about quoting someone, but I also want you to think about a quote as a piece of evidence. And we ask our students to support your answer with evidence, correct? Yes. So now let's watch. If you can't hear, let me know.
Quite often, professors like you to use quotes to support your ideas, but sometimes it's hard to incorporate them into your own writing. To make it easier, you can use the quote sandwich. The quote sandwich consists of 3 parts: the top bun, the meat, and the bottom bun. The top bun is where you introduce your idea. Give your reader some background on the quote. If you are writing about a story, tell your reader what is going on around the time when the quote appears. Next is the meat. This is where you are going to put your actual quote. The quote is kind of like your proof for your main point. And last is your bottom bun. This is where you explain your quote. Tell your reader why you used it and why it applies to your argument. Let's do an example. Let's say we're writing an essay arguing how Mother Gothel from the movie Tangled is an abusive parent. And let's say that in this paragraph, our main idea is that she is more interested in Rapunzel's hair than in her as a person. The quote we are going to use is, "I'll see you in a bit, my flower." So first we have to start with our top bun, meaning we have to set up the quote. Let's say, through Mother Gothel's interactions with Rapunzel, it is obvious that she only cares about her hair and her powers. By doing this, we are giving the reader some background on their situation and telling the reader that we are going to focus on Mother Gothel's obsession with Rapunzel's hair. So now we are going to incorporate our quote, which is the meat. Except we can't just put it in there all alone. We need to connect it to our own words. So we are going to say, she often pets Rapunzel's head, and when she leaves the tower, she says, "I'll see you in a bit, my flower." This acts as our proof for why Mother Gothel cares more about Rapunzel's powers than her as a person. Last, we are going to write our bottom bun, which explains why this quote supports what we are saying. In this case, we are going to say, she is referring to Rapunzel as a flower, which is the origin of her powers. This shows that she is more focused on Rapunzel's healing abilities than being a parent. By doing this, we are relating our quote back to our main idea. So our completed quote sandwich reads, through Mother Gothel's interactions with Rapunzel, it is obvious that she only cares about her hair and her powers. She often pets Rapunzel's head, and when she leaves the tower, she says, "I'll see you in a bit, my flower." She is referring to Rapunzel as a flower, which is the origin of her powers. This shows that she is more focused on Rapunzel's healing abilities than being a parent. By using this, we are thoroughly explaining our point, and our overall argument flows a bit better in the paragraph. The quote sandwich is always a great tool to use because it helps you stay organized, which makes a better paper.
Okay, now was that not the cutest? It is a great visual. I love that you all yeah, it wasn't Elsa, it was Rapunzel. That's how bad I am with my Disney princesses. But I love that you all like the video of the quote sandwich because I do too. And I think it's something that our students can grab hold of. And when we think about it, it is, I'm going to introduce the quote. I can give that background, but if I'm just starting this with my students, I'm going to take some baby steps. So I really just want them to tell me where this quote came from. My meat is I'm going to quote that evidence. Exactly what it says. That's where my quotations are. So often our students can do those two things. It's that bottom bun. And you can, or that bottom piece of bread. And you can tell your students, no one wants to eat a sandwich that doesn't have a bottom piece of bread because it's not complete. It closes it up. Now, when I introduced this with my class, I we actually made a sandwich so they could see the feel of it, of that top and that bottom. And we talked about um, the support that the bottom gave to the sandwich and what our sandwich would be without it. And so I really wanted them to grab hold of this. So that was important for me to carve out some time to do that because this is a form that I can use if I'm teaching in reading, in social studies, in science, all contents areas. So it was super important that my students understood that. And they thought about every quote they wrote. If they just quoted it and stopped, they're like, uh-oh, my sandwich would fall apart. And so it really made them conscious of putting that explanation justification in there. So I'm going to stop for just a few moments and I'm going to ask if you have any questions or if you would like to unmute and make a comment before we move on. Thank you all. Sometimes I talk too much. I like to give you time. So here are some templates that's going to help you introduce that quote, especially just right here at the, our elementary level. When we move on, like if I'm in third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, I'm happy if they start this way. Now, when they get really comfortable with this, yeah, I'm going to push for them to add a little bit more onto their intro. But like I said, I want them to be really comfortable with this. So some of the ones that I like, and X, and of course, X could be a person, it could be the text. So it's important that I explain that to my students that X is, again, our variable math person. So anything we can represent. It represents a lot of things. So I like this for introducing a quote. Like I said, my kids are decent with this. They do a pretty good job with this. Here's my troublesome. They're explaining the quote. I don't want my students, and of course, where it says author's name or X, that could also be the text. I like for my students to be comfortable with a couple of these, but I don't want them to stay there always. I want to move them as thinkers. And if I only this means that every time, then I'm kind of them a little bit on what they're thinking. Now, for me, this means that is where I start. This one I definitely want them to be comfortable with. And I also, when they get good there, then I'm gonna say, you know what? What if we says basically the text means that? Because you know what? We can say this means that in a lot of different ways. And I like that they know that. So I do target a couple of them, just like I would, just like I, um, just like I would for my introducing one. There's a couple of these that I will target and give my students. I probably will not show all them at once to them. There's a couple of them I want them to get really good at. Once they get really good at them, I'm not going to keep them there. I'm going to push them on. And I'm going to do that intentionally, especially if I have a piece of evidence that lends to that. So, with that being said, we are they absolutely, Ashley, they do struggle with it. They think, hey, I've got your quote down there. I'm done. No, no, no. Your job is just beginning. We're going to look at the scoring rubrics a bit later on in this session, and you're going to see that the explaining portion of that is almost more vital than getting the right answer. So we really want to get our students thinking. I can't leave I can't do a hit and run on a piece of evidence. I can't hit it and leave. I got to stay there with it. Stay at the scene of the accident. Okay. So now here's what we're going to do. And I said, "Oh, we're going to do a little heavy in our typing. Forgive. I know some of you all are driving, and if you want to unmute and share your answer, that's okay. If not, just put it in the chat." So here's what I want you to do. I've got a piece of text here. I want you to look at this text, pick out a piece of evidence that you want to use. X states. So who are our X in this is Miss Jackson. Would you complete a quote sandwich for me? So I'm going to put my X. Of course, that's our person, Miss Jackson. I want you to pick out some of our meat and cheese, a quote from there, and basically the text means that. So in the chat, would you create a text sandwich with Miss Jackson in mind? So I'm going to give you 2 minutes to do that. When you have a text sandwich ready, type it in the chat. Please type your text sandwich in the chat. I just want you to get comfortable and see what it feels like to use some of these text starters or sentence starters. So I'm going to be quiet. What does Miss Jackson state? And what does it basically mean? About a minute. If you could type your text sandwich in the chat and go ahead and share. And I really would want to push my students to say, basically, the text means that, because I want to put those words in their speaking and writing vocabulary. So I would want them to really use basically the text means that. And I would do this intentionally for a little bit of time because I want them to see that I want them to be familiar using those words and know what comes after that. If Miss Jackson, yes, and what does that positive attitude can bring? It basically means that, you know, you can, having a positive attitude can lead to good things in life. It can brighten someone's day. And so if this was my students, if you were my students and if these were the two sentence starters that I had tagged for you to use, and I like to do that when we're doing it, then I would take each one of your writings and I would highlight Miss Jackson states. And then I would go and see if I could find basically the text means that. And I would highlight that in their writing because I want my students to use these two sentence starters. And you're like, well, if they get it down, is that I really want them to use these two sentence starters because I want them to have a choice. I want them to be comfortable with it and have a choice. So I want to thank you all for sharing with me. Let's try another one. Okay. So now we're going to read about Benjamin Franklin. And we're going to say, according to Benjamin Franklin, and we're going to pick out something that he says in making this comment, he. So now we're going to take a quote from our text, and in making this comment, he. We're going to explain the comment he made. We're going to put meaning to it, and we're going to put relevance to it. So again, I'm going to give you 2 minutes, and I would love for you to use these 2 sentence starters. And I'm really going to look for according to, and I'm really going to look for in making this comment. That's what I really want to see when you're giving me this text sandwich. And if you would love to unmute and just share your text sandwich with us, that would be perfectly fine too.
Hi.
Hey.
My toe.
Karen, we're having just a little bit of trouble hearing you. I'm going to really look for in making this comment in your writing, because that's the sentence stem that I have targeted. And the reason that I'm doing that is I want my students to know that this means that, and in making this comment, and basically this means is all asking me for the same thing. It's all asking me to explain my thinking of what I've picked out. I really want them to be able to use these sentence stems and know that when I say this means, in making this comment, and basically this sustain, all wants the same thing. Because sometimes I think that our students hear stuff like this and don't really know. It just wants you to tell you what it means. Just wants you to make it relevant. So I really want to be very intentional in putting them in different situations. Okay, let's try one more. Ooh. Now, X in this is the text. The text point of view is that. All right, the text tells us, so there's where I'm going to put my piece of information in the, and we have 2 paragraphs. I'm going to pull out that piece of text, and then I'm going to put the text point is that. So let's try this one. This one's a little bit more challenging, but at the same time, this is some of the stuff that our students might be more familiar with us. The text tells us, what's one thing it tells us? That's our evidence in the blank paragraph. And then the text point is that. When I say the text point is that, I'm saying the same thing as this means in making this comment. Basically, they're saying all these mean the same thing. When you have one, just go ahead and pop it in the chat. Thank you, Jill. The text point is that. Why did they tell us this? I want my students to be able to explain why they pick something out that's important. I want my students to be able to justify. These paragraph, these sentence sandwich or these quote sandwiches are awesome. Thank you all. I love them. Ooh. It's all about using the same language, using different language to say the same thing. Thank you, Amy. Yay. I also want you to think about, so we've used 3 different sentence starters or 3 different quote starters for our sandwiches, and we've closed with 3 different explanations. Did that feel a little different? Did that make you kind of whittle your thinking to make it fit the template, the sentence? I hope it did a little bit because when we open up those opportunities and we use those didn't and we push those different sentence stems on our students, it does create a different thinking for them. It makes them think out of their comfort zone a little bit because some of them are really good with that. This means that. But you can say that a different way. And sometimes when I say that a different way, I put a little different oomph to it. I write a little bit more. I look at my situation a little differently. Now, that's the last one we're going to write, but I am going to show you a few more. I did this. This one is Laura Ingalls Wilder when we read some excerpts from her book. And I like this one because I took, we had read the excerpt and I just wanted to, talk about one of her big themes. Home is the nicest word there is. I like, in other words, she believes, because all I'm getting that when I'm asking them to say, in other words, Laura Ingalls believes, there's no place like home. You can't go anywhere to be any nicer than home. And that's a nice place. This is a nice way to incorporate that author in there. So if I want to, I want to go back just a minute. Okay, so comments on using the templates for our sandwich, the sentence stems. How did you feel about it? What do you think? And I'd love for you to unmute, share, or put in the chat. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, I want to open up this space for you before I move on.
I'll share really quick.
Okay.
I liked that using the templates, even though they're still using a template, they're all a little bit different.
Mhm.
So if we were writing on demands, for example, or whatever you're using the race, whatever you're doing, they're all going to be a little bit different. It gives them more choice in their writing, which I think makes it a little bit more engaging and not so cookie cutter.
Absolutely. And like I said, I teach these stems to where they are comfortable with them. They know how to use them. They know what fits best. And even if I see them like doing some repeats when the second part of the year when I know they've worked on these stems or templates or comfortable with them. If I see them really hanging on to the same one over and over again, then I will put them in a situation where, hey, okay, I'm gonna take this one off your plate. I want you to use another one. So I really push them to use these until they are it is a comfort level for them. And so I would do exactly what I've done here. I would give them that beginning, give them that end. Here's your evidence. I like to pick out evidence for my students. Of course, I'd have a question attached that I didn't attach to you all. But I like to pick out evidence for my students because in our elementary band, I want them to be really comfortable with what does good evidence look like? What does good evidence really look like? So I do like to, when we first start this, to really push them to what good evidence looks like. Now, we got 1,000 things to do today. And when you're in a classroom, you're looking at students' work. I'm gonna tell you what else I like to do. This is a little bit in the quote sandwich frame, but I like to highlight or have no, I don't like to highlight. I have to have them highlight what I'm looking for. So all I have to do, if I'm looking for that evidence stem, which would be our sentence stem, I want to see that it's highlighted and I want to see that there's details. So this is just a little way that helps me to really grade them really quickly formative assess. It's another way for them to evaluate their writing. So if I say, okay, go back and I want you to highlight the bread of your quote sandwich, and just do the bread. Just highlight the bread. Then it makes them conscious. Did I do my evidence and justification? Do I have that introductory? Do your bottom piece of bread. So I get to really quickly see if that's actually what they're doing. So I like that. And I like for them to do it. It is, again, that metacognition step. Now, why in the world did we spend this hour talking about evidence and explaining it? Isn't it enough that they put the answer? No, unfortunately not. According to the Kentucky Department of Education, it's not. If we look to make a 4, if you look on the right side over here, this is the one that has the gap in between because I did just grab this and cut it from KAS, my Pearson test rubric. If we look at what a 4 is, you have to clearly communicate your idea to get it there. I'm not even eligible for a 4 if I'm a student, if I have not clearly communicated my idea. And we want those 4s. If I look over here at my KAS reading, again, first bullet, it wants us to clearly communicate our ideas. They cannot wake up in March and do that. We have to practice that all year long. We have to put them in those situations all year long. So that's why I really wanted to spend this time talking about some support that I can give my students to really push them to think about the evidence that they choose. Because I don't want them to do hit and run quotes. I don't want them to do hit and run evidence because I know if they stop there, there's no way they're going to achieve a 4. They have to do that bottom piece of bread. It's important. So we have almost come to a close with our time with one another, and we've really went through a lot, and we've talked about a lot. I want you to, going back to one of our first strategies that we've worked on, create a 6-word story of today's session. And I want you to do this because I think today's session was important. I love the quotation and evidence sandwich. I love that we use those sentence stems and we put ourselves in different situations to write and say the same thing. So I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to let you synthesize 6 words about today's session. And I'm doing this because I want you to remember what we've talked about today. So this is a quick way for us to do that. think about how can I use 6 words to describe what we've worked on today. And I want you to really think, what are the 6 words that I want to remember about today's session so that I don't forget and I can take back to our students, to my students. I saw something in here that I just can't pass up. Someone said something about this is a great way to add to race. You are exactly right. What we really try to do, I really try to do in all of our sessions is I want to give you some support to what you're already doing. When we think about race and we think about our students know that strategy, well, here's something that I can layer into that that's going to make that even more meaningful to them. Because it's not when we think about a paragraph and all that goes into that, there's a lot to it. But when I'm thinking about my evidence sandwich, that's a couple of sentences that mean a whole lot to my race, to my answer, to my question. So thank you all. Okay, so this week, your challenge is use fortunately and unfortunately in your classroom. Try it out. Communication is the doorway to writing. So I ask you to write fortunately and unfortunately situations. You don't have to do that. Do them verbally. That can totally happen. Try a quote evidence sandwich with your class. Do a 2-minute write. 2-minute writes increase their stamina. It's easy. And kids really actually do like that time to write. Make sure that that 2-minute write is always connected to something that's going to happen in my class. I'm front loading what's coming on next. And pull out that golden line because if I'm a reluctant sharer, I don't want to read my whole paragraph to you. But you know what? I am very comfortable with sharing one line. And the thing about that is I never look at that. So even if they haven't written down what they want to say for their golden line, they can verbalize it to me. Because I still want to say it again. Communication is the door that we got to walk through to get great writing. Please, please, please send anything to me that you can, that you've done in class, because I love for us to grow together. And Jamie, I have come to an end with these wonderful people. Thank you all. And the slide deck you have access to has all of the templates on it, but I think I'm going to just pull those out and put them on a doc so you don't have to search through. So I will add that to your resource guide. I thought when I was sitting here, why didn't I do that? So I will do that right now. So those templates will be on your resource guide and you don't have to weed through the slides. So thank you all. You're awesome. And Jamie, I promise this time I'm actually turning it over to you.
Oh, you were fine. Thank you so much, Kim. It was a great session. You've got a lot of positive feedback there in the chat. So we've loved having you with us. And I think we're with you again tomorrow night for grades K through 2. Is that right? I think.
I am Heroes tomorrow night.
Yes. I think I think you have Recharge and Hero tomorrow.
Oh,
So we'll see you.
Oh, okay. Okay. Perfect. Okay.
And I just dropped the evaluation there in the chat. And if you guys have any questions, I will be here till everybody's gone. So thank you all, and I hope you have a great evening.
So Jamie will,
I'll double check that calendar. That's what's on the calendar, but
yeah, it's Heroes. Yeah, just let me